Well, I caught Jeff between various spaces on X. Jeff, you're becoming quite the space person. I guess.
Yeah, trying to keep my feet on the ground, but it's always good to be in space. As
Well, listen, on this particular day, I don't think that, I mean, everybody's already done the Delaware court case to death. I'm sure you have lots
yeah,
of news on that. But I think the big news today is really JD at AI Driver. He was over on the did a video with yeah, Farzad, and they decided in that particular program that version 13 is perfect. It's ready to go. It's There's nothing left to be done. I'm not sure that they're 100% right on that, but I went and started looking at a lot of the other videos, Holmar's and some others that have been out there. I know that there was another that analyst, big billionaire investor. I forget his name right now. Anyway, he said he watched every video on version 13. Took him 4 hours, and he was blown away so much that he has increased his investment significantly to the point of feeling pressure. He's so heavily invested at this point, and he's a billionaire. I mean, how do you feel pressure about money when you're a billionaire? Anyway, so
it's all
um,
relative.
it's all relative. So JD says he thinks that his first uh, the, the first driverless ride will happen within Elon's timeline. And he has backed up from 5 years to 3 years to 2 years, and now thinks it'll be sometime this summer, as does Elon. And I'm not sure, quite frankly, after watching all these videos, I have my new method of judging, and I think it only has to be better than Waymo. What does it have to do? Have you in your watching all this over the last few days? What and driving? I'm assuming you're like on 12.5 point whatever,
563, yep, in
five
the
six three,
in the Model X and the 12553 in the Cybertruck. Yeah, the
which is
latest.
very good already.
Yep.
What do you think it would need to do that your version or what you're seeing of 13? What do you think it needs to do to get to the point where it's better than Waymo?
Well, I
Or
can tell you Tesla can't wait to get a version of 13 out so they can get miles and they can get data. My guess is between the training runs, the the model creation and the testing they do, that they've got simulators inside where they could accelerate and get data very quickly, through simulators. And then they've got the employees running it, but they really want to get it out to, tens of thousands and then, hundreds of thousands of vehicles. And they want to they want to build out that data set. So I think that's job number one. Because we've added features to this release. This release has added further automation to the drive because, and we've had a bit of these, biases as we've been testing this for a number of years now. We just every first major release, we're kind of, we're in a bit of like, oh, this is great. This could be it. And that happens. And I used to, as being chief quality officer at a tech company, run, user trials or run, we call them different names, dog fooding. Will the dog eat the dog food? Kind of thing. And we would run these internal trials, and there was all kinds of interesting things that you could find. We came up with surveys. We came up with, statistical tests to understand certainty, because in a user in a trial, in a small trial, you have a small sample set, and you're trying to figure out how it would extrapolate itself amongst a larger population. And I will tell you that you could certainly find out if you have a disaster on your hand, but you can't find it's in the smaller trials, you really can't project, do you have perfection in front of you? Uh, and so what I think Tesla's trying to do is get this in as many hands as possible. Um, and there's still some things that they, if you looked at the release notes, they kind of bifurcated it where they got, here's everything that we want to do in 13, and then they cut it. Obviously, they cut it at a certain point for stability purposes and to get the release out. That's not uncommon. It's called, like a branch or, and then, what they'll do is they'll pick up those remaining pieces and bring them in. So it looks, they're still bringing features in. They're going to increase the parameter count. They're going to do a number of things. And of course, they've got to get it working on hardware 3 vehicles as well. So I think those are the priorities right now is for Teslas to get it wide, get it on as many vehicles as possible. And I would just, in everything I just said there, I would just caution against these smaller data sets, both on the side of it's perfect, it's ready to go, and also on the side of, like this FSD tracker, like, oh, it's not good until this tracker says it's good. In my experience, these smaller data sets again can tell you if you have a disaster on your hand, but they really can't tell you much about both plotting the future progress and how would this work amongst millions and millions of product.
Yeah, so Waymo has a fairly small data set by comparison. It's thousands of rides and hundreds of thousands of rides now, but it's compared to the capacity of Tesla as they get each iteration out there, and they're perfectly happy to drive those things around now. They've got of course some robotic. They've got some backup in terms of human backup, which Tesla is now apparently going to have something that will be backing them up in terms of remote capability. But overall, the question I'm really trying to get to is, if Tesla decided to come out with it tomorrow, isn't it already as good as Waymo?
Well, I've spoken about this on not so much one robotaxi company specifically, but on the outside, until there's a federal standard developed of here's the data set we want, here's the measurement apparatus, here's how you take the data, here's the number of samples we want, here's the duration of time, here are the specific metrics we want taken. Until that happens, I would guard against analysts and folks talking and trying to compare the two. One, two, they're run differently. I'm sitting in my Tesla today, and if I don't, even though it's going to, if it's approaching a car, I know it's going to stop. But if I just don't like the speed at which it's braking and I want it to brake faster, I hit the brake, and that's an intervention. In the Waymo, there's nobody sitting in that vehicle, and it may have that same behavior, and it won't have the intervention. So just by that example alone, you can't compare the two data sets, because we would call this in the fact we call this the unit under test, UUT. These are fundamentally different data sets and what they're doing. It's logical to want to compare the two and say, hey, they're trying to drive without people, we're trying to drive without people. But the way we're taking the data today is different. One, so that was the second point. The third point is Tesla has this data, and they have it across hundreds of thousands of vehicles, billions of miles. They don't have to release the data yet. And if I were Tesla, I would not release the data because of items 1 and 2 I just mentioned.
Right.
Right now, people don't even know how to interpret the data, and they're trying to compare it to other systems that it's a different mode. There's nobody in. So until Tesla, so until one, there's a standard, until two, that they're actually operated the same way. And then three, Tesla has the data they have right now in the system and the way that they're driving it. And what's nice about what Tesla has is they also have the human driven data of their vehicles as well. Mm-hmm. So they really have a good baseline and trajectory of where they're taking it from human only driven to FSD supervised. They have a really good path and trajectory. They're just taking completely different approaches. Finally, these robotaxi companies I've seen, I'm not going to talk about any one in particular, but it feels like when you look at the vehicle and you kind of, you look at everything, it feels like it's a prototype operation where somebody put their heel on it and shoved it out the door, because the sample sizes are so small, The number of streets are so small. And yes, I mean, the number of rides are growing, which is good. I'm not saying they're all bad,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, we all don't live in urban settings. We all, we all have different situations. And the highest order bit, the problem to solve is humans driving cars causes medical damage and death to
Right,
people.
right.
And we, if you want to eliminate that, just like we got out of obviously elevators, Elon's used the example of elevators being, if you want to get out of that mode, you have to go the route that Tesla's going. The route that everyone else is going is not going to get us there. We're not all going to move to cities,
Yeah, yeah.
and we need to go greater distances, and we need more flexibility. So Tesla is solving the problem for humanity.
So over the last year or two, as this thing has gotten better and better, and different companies have come out with, again, like a Waymo, some really smart folks, people that you and I probably even respect, um, are thinking that there's going to be other companies that are really going to be able to compete with Tesla, whether it's a Waymo or whether it's a Baidu, whether it's a Toyota, who today we heard people saying, "Oh, Toyota might be developing a car that'll be able to go without a steering wheel or without pedals." And I thought to myself, well, okay, but if Toyota was doing that right now, if they're in process, they don't have the data, they don't have a lot of stuff. So in general, I thought we might spend some time talking about some of the ways in which Tesla is that there may be room for Baidu and for Waymo and for others, even with their clunky hardware and their equipment that looks like somebody's science experiment instead of a car. Um, but there's stuff that Tesla's doing that will pretty well guarantee them the lion's share, or maybe even as much market as they want. All right. So you want to play?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The obvious thing would be the 6 million cars that are ready to go with
Yeah.
capacity to build 3 million probably next year. They say they'll only build 2.3, but they have the capacity at least to build 3 million if they decided to gin it up. And then more in 2026. It drives anywhere, and it's likely to be the safest and smoothest. That would be, I guess, what I would call kind of the obvious aspects. You want to speak to any of those?
I think it's going to be a winner take most market, but yeah, Tesla won't be giving all the rides, and people should just understand that. And it's okay. You want competing services, you want things trying to push the envelope to get better one way or another. But in any new product that's being developed, the first unit you ship is invariably not at scale, and for some period of time you're not at your peak scale. But what you do as a business person, what you do as a product manager, what you do as a professional is you try to understand the available market size and your ability to scale, your cost to scale, and you try to understand what your cost structure will be like at launch without scale, what it would be like at scale, what it would be like with further competition, what it would be like at midlife, what it would be like at end of life. And you plot out and you make an entire model for the product for the entire curve of its lifespan. It's not clear to me that some of these services have done that in a way, because sometimes companies feel like, well, if you solve the problem of like self-driving, just the money is going to fall on top of you and everything will be figured out. Well, if the cars are really this expensive, if the sensor suites are really this expensive, if the manufacturing method of assembly, then some level of tear down and reassembly. And this is what I think most people don't understand. I actually believe the cost of the sensors can come down in volume. I think we're going to realize we don't need as many sensors as people have kind of thought about developing. It's not like another sensor is a great thing. Um, I think they can come down to where it's not going to be overly prohibitive to have one of these decked out vehicles. However, the disassembly and reassembly of it and the serviceability of it and that cost structure is going to be a problem. It's going to be a drag on effect for a long period of time. And I don't think a lot of people understand this or have studied it uh, uh, very well. Just people have to imagine, like, these cars are built and they're shipped as a vehicle, and then they're torn down, and maybe they're held at some point in the factory now, and they're being disassembled and reassembled in a different way. It's still a very expensive proposition. We would have to do this, and by the way, this is something that happens in the industry today to do intercontinental commerce in some countries. Some countries won't allow you to import unless you have a certain amount of that product built in that country.
Right.
Brazil was famous for this. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to build the product in Asia, and then we'd have to tear it down in the kits, and then we'd send it in kits, and then we would reassemble it.
Right.
But the whole cost structure for that was enormous, but it was lower than taking the tariff hit. So, but your original question was, is there room for many? The answer is yeah, there will be multiple players. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to be winner take most. I think Tesla is going to license this out, and then I think it'll bifurcate and multiply pretty rapidly from there.
So in the sense of Tesla themselves getting the vast majority of the product, one of the things that I thought in particular is your specialization is that because Tesla is vertical all the way from the battery and the raw materials for the battery being refined now, all the way from that aspect, all the way up and through the chip, the software and the data centers. I mean, everything. They're vertical in every single way, even no dealerships. That this will always ensure that they have the least expensive hardware and software, which impacts, yeah, okay, over 500,000 miles, it may not be more than a penny a mile or something, but there's still a cost. There's still a reality there.
Yeah, I think the way Tesla looks at this is how do you get the car in the equation to approach theoretical zero, and the rest of it, the rest of the business case being the software and the service. So yeah, they're going to continue focusing on reducing. There's some interesting graphs out there, like the price of 1 gigabyte of memory and what that's done over the last
Oh,
20
yes.
years. Now, this is a lot more complex than in terms of assembly and so forth, but there's still a ways to go on vehicles, and there's still a lot more. I think that's one of the reasons Tesla is going after this not new, but this novel manufacturing method for unboxed. I think they're just going after the next big chunk in terms of a vehicle. The other reason that Tesla vertically integrates so well, if you think about it, in the beginning it was because there wasn't a supply base to serve them. And then they realized it's like, okay, there's some things here we have special sauce on that others don't do. Like with our motors and inverters, we think we've got an advantage. And now finally it's coming back into a supply chain security and sustainability. Imagine you have now solved self-driving. Imagine you have now solved it. And now all of a sudden, somebody within the supply chain can come in and say, I'm going to lock up all the germanium for silicon.
Right.
I'm going to lock out all of this mineral. So I know Elon's thinking about this, and I know they're actioning a lot of this too inside of Tesla. And it's one of the reasons I think they've kept a very strong relationship with China because of actually for mineral sourcing. So I know Elon's thinking about this, and I think supply chain redundancy is going to be a critical factor as this whole thing proceeds to its finality. Like, can you make the product, and can you get it out there in volume, and can you get it at the right price point?
Yeah, and then another aspect of it to me would be Tesla's cash advantage. And I don't just mean cash in the bank, although that is a massive advantage, but also because they're going to have this Airbnb element to it. it'll be cash positive from day one on that Airbnb part,
Yes.
where a normal company has to buy the hardware and amortize that hardware over, 3 years or whatever, but they've got that hardware hit right away, and also it's a cash hit. So this is to me
Yes.
uh, uh, just a absolutely amazing advantage.
Yeah. It's a it's an approach to the business model that's been thought about for years, but you needed to do the hard work in the hardware side to enable it. And others don't realize that the capital barrier to entry is so high. There's a reason there's not a million cruise vehicles out there right now. There's a reason for these things. And and there's also a reason there's 7 million Teslas out there on the other side of it. So yeah, this is very well thought out from a capital expenditure perspective, and it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off in a big way. And it really this next year. I mean, this next year is going to be probably one of the most exciting years in the history of the company. As literally, you know, right in front of our eyes, we could see the transformation of how vehicles are operated.
Yeah, absolutely. So one that comes on my side of the table, although I'm sure you were involved in it a lot too, or maybe still are, is Tesla's brand awareness. So once they put these out there, there's not going to be any other company that's got the product out there that's going to have the brand awareness of the big T, of Tesla. So getting people to download the app, a lot of people already have the app. All of that type of thing. That's going to be huge in terms of the initial rollout.
Yeah. And I think people are also, we live in this 24/7 news cycle. And I think for the last year, everybody's been hypersensitive of, is Elon pissing off this type of people or that type of people? And what we saw happen in that 24/7 news cycle is we saw a shift in sentiment of people and like what they're focused on, what they're really worried about. And at the end of the day, you know, there were people being called Hitler all kinds of different names. At the end of the day, they became quite popular, and and people are waking up and realizing that, I mean, I think where I'm going with this is that on the brand awareness side, the Tesla brand awareness, the awareness of Tesla as an electric vehicle provider is very high.
Mhm.
Where it's not high yet, and I don't think we're going to have these resistant forces anymore, but where it's not as high yet is on autonomy. I think less than a fraction of a tenth of a percent of people understand that you can get in a Tesla, not even type in the destination, just say the destination to the car, and then a map will appear and a pin will drop and you'll see the route to your destination and you press a button and the car goes. I don't think I think it's a fraction of
Right.
it's tenths or hundreds of a percent understand that.
Right. I think you're right. Then there's the ability to bring Grok into the cabin. So nobody
Yeah.
else has, I mean, they might have, Google, for instance, obviously Waymo should be able to work with Google to get a voice into the cabin. And I guess they probably, do they already, I haven't been in a Waymo yet. Do they already have any kind of a conversational, uh, uh,
I think there could be some prompts, but it's not what Tesla and Grok are just like they've been focused on the latency of the full self-driving system. On this language model, they can really drive the latency a lot lower. And you're starting to even see it with some of these language models. Now, Grok has yet to bring out the voice side of it yet, but you're seeing it with ChatGPT, you're seeing it with Gemini Advanced, and it's getting really good. Like you can literally I would invite anybody, I would encourage anybody listening to try the conversation mode in Chat GPT. I think it's the edition you may have to pay for. Same with Gemini Advanced. It's a really special thing. It's very low latency. It feels like it's kind of spooky too. You got to turn it off because they'll just keep listening to you. But it's a very special thing. It feels like we've taken another step forward in intelligence. So I think that experience, while I think there's a definition of have, and I don't think all of those companies yet control the end-to-end experience in a vehicle. The only one that does is Tesla. So in terms of the audio, the mic placement, the speakers, the echo cancellation, like the whole thing to make the whole system work and work at low latency, I think Tesla's that is part of the system design of a Tesla is that you can have that conversation, that experience inside of a robotaxi where if you got to say, hey, look, I think all these things are actually floating out in separate clouds and eventually they're going to connect.
Yeah.
So like they introduce profiles, hurry, and so forth. They introduce all these things. All of a sudden they're going to connect and all of a sudden you're going to be able to say, hey, can you change how you're driving and go a little bit faster? I need to get to my destination 2 minutes faster.
Right.
I think you'll be able to do that. And I think that's the missing piece, but I think pieces of it are out there. They're just in separate clouds and eventually they're going to connect. I don't know if every other company can actually do that.
Right, right, right. And then something that I'm always surprised that people forget, Tesla has the coolest entertainment center by a lot. And that's going to matter even
Yes.
more maybe on an autonomous car, a completely autonomous car or a robotaxi. People are going to want to, check out the entertainment center.
True. And I think you hear Elon talking about AI game development. He's obviously a world ranked gamer. And I wouldn't be surprised that if he goes from acquiring games and licensing games for his vehicles to all of a sudden making them.
Yeah, he probably will. It sounds like something he'd probably like to do again. He
Yeah.
probably hasn't really built a game since he was 12. But
Yeah.
then of course, we have a purpose-built cyber cab coming. And I don't know that anybody else is purpose building anything for this industry. Anything that you're aware of?
Well, I mean, Geely is there are some players in China doing it. And I think you're going to see more of it happening. Uh, and remember the development cycle in China and mostly South Korea is a lot shorter than the US. So I think they can really whip up something pretty quickly. I'm pretty sure they've seen the Cybercab and they're already, they've got clay models and wooden models already started and they're already, trying to get something out in the tooling. I wouldn't be, Tesla's got to move here. They got to move here pretty quickly because the Chinese could ship something. I'm not saying it's going to have all the functionality of a Cybercab, but they can start shipping vehicles that kind of start to look more and more like that pretty quickly. I don't think it's a big deal at the end of the day, but it just they move very quickly.
Right. We have something called a Cybertruck
Yeah.
that we can put that will be out there as a what do you call it as a robotaxi. Nobody else
I think
has.
it's a strange robotaxi. I don't know why I know there were people talking about buying 50 Cybertrucks for a robotaxi. I think it's kind of a bizarre thing. It's a big vehicle and it's kind of big to get into different spaces and so forth. I think robotaxis should be really easy to get in and out of. I'm not saying Cybertruck isn't. The doors open at 90-degree angles, but you're stepping up into something versus stepping across into something. So and I think that's what the Cybercab is made for. Very simple ingress and egress. And I don't know if the Cybertruck does that. But I mean, it'll have the software capability to offer it.
But it'll be a novelty. That's why people want to
Yeah.
do it. It's a novelty
Yeah.
because X and Y and Z stars have them, and they're fun. Kids will want to get in them and show their friends. That's what they've hailed is a Cybertruck. Okay, so switching subjects, JP Morgan says today that this is Miss Kaniva. Ms. Kaniva predicts an average West Texas intermediate price of $64 per barrel in 2025, going down to $57 a barrel in 2026. And of course, that compares to about $70 now. Global supply demand fundamentals are the main drivers of the forecast, although President-elect Donald Trump's pledge to keep oil prices low are expected to have a measurable effect. Add to that Argentina has dramatically increased its production, I think from 200,000 to 500,000 a day, and predicting to go to 1 million a day. That's actually going to have a world impact in terms of the number. Mr. Trump has pledged to keep oil prices low through sector tax cuts and deregulation. Many prospective sites, however, are unprofitable at current commodity prices near 70, and JP Morgan expects only a marginal $500,000 a barrel increase in 2026 from the United States. That's shocking. Anyway, what do you think? Do you think, I mean, obviously would be a mixed bag. It'd be great for the economy, not great for the oil industry, and maybe not great for selling electric cars.
Yeah, I certainly think that there's a bit of a prohibitive effect on the price of oil and gasoline in vehicles. So I think what the industry needs to be focused on is just, harnessing more and more power from more and more sources. We're going to need a lot more power for data center, everything else that we're doing anyway, to start really pushing down the price of electricity, which has been, going up in a lot of places. So that's one thing that, we're kind of EV enthusiasts and Tesla enthusiasts we talk about. But if you look at the price of electricity, it's not been so hot the last couple of years. And that's been part of the energy, issue, with energy going up. So I think that's the part of it that needs to be figured out. But EVs just need to be a better offering, and I don't want to, quote my namesake, but Bob Lutz, he said, look, when the charge times on these things get down to, 10 minutes or so, and the range, and I'm not saying I agree with him, but he's basically saying, like, people, when they think about EVs, they think about how far I can go and how long does it take me to charge it. And a lot of people just don't realize that you treat it like your smartphone. You plug it in overnight and you wake up to a full tank. And he even mentioned that too recently. But when those two things are kind of now at kind of hyper levels, and they work really quickly, we're going to see this V4 charger now from Tesla coming. I think it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
When these things start happening, start becoming commonplace, you're going to really see EV adoption grow because they're better vehicles. They accelerate faster. They will
Safer.
be cheaper to build, and because the ICE vehicles peaked in 2018, and a lot of people don't talk about this. They're really not getting cheaper. Over the last 6 years, you've seen the average transaction price. It's gone up $10,000 over the last 6, 7 years. And meanwhile, the average transaction price of an EV has come down. So when that accelerates, you're gonna really see EV adoption. The price of oil then will be kind of more of a secondary factor. Long answer.
So we have been had about 4 weeks now since the election. Yeah, almost exactly. Believe it or not, 4 weeks. But a lot has happened in that 4 weeks. How are you feeling about what you're seeing from Trump and the Doge boys and everybody else in terms of the cabinet picks, in terms of some of the things that they've been saying in order to set up their taking over next month? Thoughts about so.
Overall, I mean, they surveyed Americans. And they said about 63% approve of the transition. That's a very high percentage, actually, when you have, kind of a bifurcated, divided
Country.
country. And so he's got high approvals on the transition. Is everybody going to agree with every pick? No. It looks like when he set out to do the president-elect set out to do his picks, he really didn't care about, he really wanted to get, it wasn't like, color of skin or whatever. It was just more like, what's the best person for the job? And
Aligned
he
with
wasn't
him.
he wasn't too
Aligned
concerned
with
about their
him.
baggage either.
He wanted that alignment with him, that feeling that he could count on the person, that they were not going to be, wandering off into their own direction. So I mean, I think those were two of the other, and disruptors, people that were not only good managers but had the capability to go and change
Yeah,
things.
yeah, a lot of them happen to be really strong women leaders in the industry, and like, yeah, I look at like the AG for example. Obviously, the first pick didn't work out as well, but the second pick, I mean, it fits the mold you exactly described in terms of great leadership qualities, great experience, but also someone that can be trusted. And yeah, so I think he's going after that, and they've got the Senate, so they've got to figure out like how to get this, to get many of these picks over the goal line. But I feel good about it, and we're 45 or 46 days, whatever, how many days we are from inauguration, and you can feel, the world leaders are meeting, they're meeting with him already, and things are kind of being set up like this is what we're going to see happening. I see tremendous leadership already, and I see the world kind of responding to what is about to happen, and it's good things. And you can debate, you may not. There's no one candidate everybody's going to agree with every policy on, but in general, I think for the greater good, you know, people are happy. Things are moving in a positive. Not everybody's happy. I get it. We're divided, but overall, I think it's going well.
So there's been a lot of what would you call it? Turmoil, though, around the world, good and bad. So
Yeah.
we've had Lebanon peace agreement. We've got the Gaza still embroiled, but with threats of you better return these Americans before I get in office. You've got submarines uh, in the Philippines, from Russian submarines in the Philippines. You've got South Korea having some kind of a meltdown. France, the government collapsed today. Holy mackerel! You think a lot of this is the transition and these people trying to position themselves ahead of January 20th?
Yeah. Some of it's connected. Some of it may not be connected. But what you can tell what this president-elect is doing is he knows the leverage of the United States, and he knows how to leverage it and how to get as much use out of it as possible. And some of this is talk, some of this is real, but all of it is understanding leverage and understanding negotiations. And maybe they're not all going to land. This is what like how um, unrealistic sometimes the media coverage is. Of, oh, he did this. Oh, he did that. Like he's a madman. Well, no, he understands like all these things aren't going to land. But just even if a portion of them land, I mean, we're in a much better place. And also the outgoing administration right now. I mean, I would say if someone were to poll that administration right now, I would think the polls are plummeting
Right.
because now you've got Democrats who are very upset at the pardoning, and that could be a whole show debating that back and forth. I think what a lot of people have issue with is just the hundreds of times up until the election of saying, he's not going to do something, and then he does it. And so I would think on the inverse of or the other side of your question, I would say the polling is going to be pretty low on the outgoing and getting worse on the outgoing administration. I mean, the scene is just not good. I mean, we've got, you know, all this instability all over the world. People are on vacations and, different continents and doing kind of different things. Like, what's going on here at home?
Yeah.
And how do we, button that up?
So I saw a CNBC video today where they were talking that they were still expecting the Santa Claus rally. All is good. People are relaxed. The VIX is under 13, I think, today.
Yeah.
Market's up again, all-time highs across the board. Tesla finished the day very strong today again. Somebody's playing at the end of the market. This is twice now that we've seen this big jump at the end of the day. I've said my theory has been that no matter who is elected, we're still really on Biden time. So whatever's happening now for the next 6, 8, 10 weeks, whatever, is pretty much just based on what was already going on. You can't turn the ship around that, just by Trump.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think there's a lot of money coming into the market thinking that corporate taxes are not going to go up. Remember, if President Trump was not elected, the end of next year, the Trump tax cuts would have come off.
Right.
So you're going to have this whole pool of people, middle class and above, getting tax increases. And then you're going to have companies paying more tax. And then their platform was to even increase the corporate tax higher. So with that cloud lifted, even though he's not in office and it's not January 20th, I think money's flowing into the market.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Because
I wasn't meaning the market itself. I meant the underlying economy.
oh, no,
Underlying
gotcha.
economy. It's going to take a couple of months before it becomes a Trump economy. Now, the fact that he's making all these moves with Canada and with Mexico, et cetera, these early moves that are even before he's inaugurated, those things can start having an impact
Yeah.
in March. But what do you think? Do you think we'll see a nice first quarter, and then maybe the second quarter we're going to take off?
The only thing I'm keeping an eye on, Randy, it's a great question, is it's hard to predict.
Mhm.
Is the jobs situation. In the last people don't forget in the last jobs report right before the election, we only added 12,000 jobs. And everybody's like, well, yeah, it was hurricane this or that, but that was already accounted for. We were adding 200,000 jobs a month, and they took the expectation down to 120 or something, and we added 12,000 jobs. So if we have another report like that, because right now the Fed's mandate is around employment and around price stability and inflation,
Right.
and they were all kind of somewhat going in the right direction. Inflation wasn't coming down as fast, but it was in the mid twos. If employment breaks, you know, all bets are off. I think you're going to see much faster loosening of interest rate policy, but maybe there could be a bigger underlying issue. The JOLTS data we just got this week, that's from 2 months ago.
Right, I know. I mean, so much. We've been talking about this for a couple of days. One of my hopes is that the Doge Commission will impact somehow on these on getting better numbers faster. I mean, it just makes no
Yeah, we
sense.
still have Fed people. The Fed still sends people with clipboards in the grocery stores to find out grocery store pricing.
And those are PhD economists.
Yeah.
You have 400 on staff, PhD economists at the Fed. That'll be, I hope that'll be one of the
and
places.
they're and they may be smart, but these tools are not smart. And living for years, with these antiquated tools, it does not take long to build some of these tools. And a builder like an Elon Musk or somebody, could figure this stuff out much quicker. He's just not going to be able to do everything, though, is the point. But yeah, you're correct. But yeah, the job situation is. I mean, the GDP tracker is over 3%. I think the job situation is the one to really keep a close eye on.
Do you think that AI will begin to push that productivity number up this year?
It's going to take a bit more time. I actually don't think the first wave of productivity tool. I think they're making people better at their jobs, but it may not actually be increasing quantifiable output.
Hmm.
And I don't think the tools are as good as advertised,
Hmm.
meaning like the co-pilots and things of the world. I think they're giving bad responses, and they're not. If those companies were actually truthful and they were posting their utilization rates of their tools, how long are these desktops lit up, and what percent of the time are they using these things? And if they actually told us what was the success rate of somebody querying Copilot for something, or whether it's a drawing or a slide, and then the person actually using it, I think the numbers would be very low. So we're at the start of something, but I don't think it's impacting productivity numbers meaningfully yet.
Okay. All right. What about for you? Is it improving?
Definitely not impacting. I mean, I'm using them. I'm using all of them. I have all the paid services, but boy, I find a lot of like significant errors where it's almost like now I'm triangulating them together against each other, and they continue to just give me different information, and it becomes really difficult to know. Like, you're spending a lot of time error checking, put it that way,
Yeah.
and many times they won't give you a response at all. They're like, now they're scared politically, or they're scared from many, different things. They don't even give you a response at all. So I think Grok 2 has a very good opportunity to pass these on many different metrics.
All right. Well, Jeff, I think I've hit the end of my list. Do you have anything on your list that I didn't cover today?
No, I mean, I think Tesla's closing out the quarter strong. They lifted this interest rate promotion. I think they're really trying to get the order book filled up. They don't want people waiting for the last 3 or 4 days of the month, because if you flip off 0% interest rate, your total life, you know, cost of that vehicle is going to go up several thousand. So they may do inventory discounts in the last couple of days. You never know what's going to happen, but I like the fact that Tesla's trying to get that order book complete, and there's great deals out there. So I, I, I think it's going to be a strong quarter for Tesla. I think the biggest thing for Tesla is keeping production volumes high as they go into these next generation vehicles. And the other big thing is obviously the services side with autonomy. I think that's going to continue to surprise people every quarter. And I use my own anecdotal uh, usage of, a year ago in FSD 11, I was using it 30% of the time. Now I can't get into the vehicle and not use it. It's almost 100%. It's certainly north of 90% of the time I use it. And if that happened with me, then that tells me that more people are going to be buying the service and they're going to be using it more often.
Yeah, the key I think too is also, if you take my anecdotal example, is, I was still a little nervous about it until hands-free. And
Yeah,
now, I mean, it's like, are you kidding me? Why would I not use it? If I'm going more than a mile, why wouldn't I turn it on? So,
right.
yeah, I think people that have already tried it and might have been a little afraid of it, if they go back now with the current version, it's night and day compared to what it was even a couple of months ago. All
Yeah.
right, Jeff, I appreciate you as always coming on and helping us to understand some of this stuff. And we'll, of course, unless the creek rises, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. Take care, everyone.
We just wanted to be able to talk about the numbers. Let's take a look and see where we are. We have got Tesla, of course, ended up $6.51 today. That was, again, a lot of that was at the very end. It was only up a couple of bucks. And then all of a sudden, very nice finish for the second day. No, I think it was Monday and today. I can't remember for sure, but twice now we've seen that action. And down 71 cents in the after hours. So really didn't take much back in the after hours. The Dow was up 308, the NASDAQ up 254, and the S&P up 36. And of course, with that kind of a NASDAQ number, you can bet that the entire Magnificent Seven did well today. All right, let's go ahead and see where things are going as opposed to what has already happened. All right, so we have the 10-year bond was up 1.2, but it was up more earlier. So we're back under 4.2% on that 10-year yield. So that's good news. And the the 2-year was down exactly the same amount. I'm sorry, up exactly the same amount, sitting at 4.138. And the 1 month was up 2.7, so up a little stronger today than the other two. All right, let's go to oil. We were just talking about the oils. Well, oil, right? Basically, the Texas Intermediate dropped back down to under 69 to 68.74, and Brent sitting at 72.50, which is less than a $4 difference. So, suggesting that international tensions aren't bad, but are not settled yet either. $3 is kind of the normal split for those of you who don't watch every day. Natural gas is up 1% in the pre-market at $3.07. And gold down $1.60 in the pre-market to 2,674. So it was up nicely earlier, and then has come down a little bit in the pre-market. Silver similar, down just a tiny bit, 0.13%. But almost $32. So it's still on its way back now to that 34. Copper sitting at $4.20, down almost unchanged actually in the after hour, or the pre-market rather. Crypto 3,286 up for the day, sitting at 98.8. We are taking another run at 100. Who says it goes over? Let me know in the comments. Is it going to happen before Christmas? Will it happen before the end of the year? Or are we going to have another pullback before we test the potential to go over 100? All right, we've got the equities, Dow Jones sitting at $8 down. are 0.02%. We've got the S&P down 3, or 0.05, and the NASDAQ down 21.25, or 0.09. So not a lot of activity so far in the pre-market. All right, so as always, I'd love to have you like and subscribe and hit notify. Buy yourself some Cybertruck bottle openers. You'll be glad you did. Hit the Patreon number if you'd like, and follow Jeff Lutz. Follow him over there on X. He does some great postings all through the week, and and then you get to hear him in detail give his analysis here on Wednesdays. So that's all I got for you right now. I will be back later tonight, 7:45. I have no idea. Well, I still don't have any idea what I'm going to talk about tonight, but I'm sure I'll come up with something good. Let me know in the comments if you got something you want me to talk about. Maybe you can give me a tip, a hint. It's been great talking to you.